The Epics of Homer, selections from the Iliad and the Odyssey. This book introduces us to the Iliad and the Odyssey, some of the oldest stories we have. Both stories were originally very long poems in the Greek language or in the Greek mythology. They tell the stories of heroes facing enormous and frightening challenges and meeting those challenges with bravery, skill, and ingenuity. The Iliad and the Odyssey was believed to have been composed around 8th or 7th century BCE. It was passed down through oral tradition before it became a written text. It influenced the Greek culture, literature, and the art. So who is the author? Homer was an ancient Greek poet who is credited as the author of the Iliad and the Odyssey, the two epic poems that are foundational works of the ancient Greek literature. He is considered as one of the most revered and influential authors in history. So what do you think is the story of Iliad? I know some of you are very familiar with this story because it has been discussed by some of our teachers. So the Iliad is a tale of war known as the Trojan War. A number of great kings joined forces and led a war to the city of Troy. So the Iliad focuses on the events that happened in the 10th and final year of the Trojan War.
In the introduction, the reader is illuminated to the ongoing epic that is the Trojan War, which has been raging already for 10 years. Apollo inflicts a plague on the Achaean army after Agamemnon keeps one of his priest's daughters as a prize. And this dates back to the origins of the war itself, in which Paris, Prince of Troy, took Helen from King Menelaus. The Greek army, the Achaeans, are closing in on Troy, whose warriors, the Trojans, refuse to back down and are determined to drive off their invaders. During the rising action, Agamemnon takes Briseis from Achilles, the mightiest of all Achaean warriors. Zeus agrees to punish the Achaeans for Achilles, who is refusing to fight because of his pride and honor. They've been besmirched. Mortals and gods fight and are wounded in battle. Gods even take sides, sometimes switching back and forth. Gods cannot die, but when they are wounded, they often return to Zeus. But countless mortals do die in these battles, which are brutal and arduous. Zeus forbids the other gods to interfere in the war. With Zeus's help, Hector, son of King Priam and brother of Paris, breaks through to the Achaean ships, hoping to burn them. Patroclus, Achilles' closest friend, tries to persuade his comrade to fight. Instead, Achilles, unable to get over his injured pride, gives Patroclus his armor and tells him to lead the Achaeans into battle himself. Hector kills Patroclus and then takes the armor Achilles had given his fallen friend and wears it around as a sign of disrespect. Achilles, learning his beloved friend has been killed, joins the battle at last, and the gods even return to fighting. During the climax of the Iliad, Achilles chases and then kills Hector in single combat. In doing so, he resigns himself to a fate of glory in exchange for life itself. He will soon die, having avenged his friend. During the falling action, Achilles' rage is hardly sated. He essentially holds Hector's body hostage, and Priam, Hector's father, begs Achilles for his son's body so he can give it a proper burial. His humility strikes a chord with Achilles, and he returns Hector's body to his father. During the Iliad's resolution, Hector is buried in Troy. The characters in life and death can now achieve the honor of closure, not just of battle, but through the important ritual of burial.
For the plot analysis, introduction, Apollo inflicts a plague on the Achaean army. So when after 9 years of fighting with the Trojan War, the Greeks, Achaeans, capture two young maidens, so the Achaean leader Agamemnon takes them as war prizes. War prizes. So he keeps Chryseis and gives Briseis to Achilles. So Chryseis' father, Chryses, puts out a ransom for his daughters to come home, but Agamemnon refuses. So her father is a priest of the god Apollo. So Chryseis prays to Apollo, who hears her and sent a plague to the Achaean army, and that leads to Achaean dies from the plague. So Agamemnon reluctantly sends Chryseis home because of what happened. So a lot of special events happen in the rising action of this story that we will be going to break down one by one. So as Agamemnon reluctantly sends Chryseis home, Agamemnon demands that Achilles give him Chryseis. So the two heralds of Agamemnon escort Briseis back to Agamemnon's camp. So Achilles was insulted and furious and refuses to fight against the Trojans anymore because he was mad by Agamemnon as he took back Briseis from him. So he enlists the services of Zeus, the king of gods, to slant or to withdraw the battling against the Achaeans so that they will lose the war. So with Zeus on the side of the Trojans and Achilles refusing to fight anymore, the Achaeans begins to suffer grave losses in the war. So the Achaeans are continually beaten down until finally a nighttime mission conducted by Odysseus and Diomedes allows them to uncover Trojan war plans. So as much as hope as this brings to the Achaeans, the Trojans are still able to beat the Achaean soldiers back until they reach the Achaean camp. So Achilles is concerned for his military comrades, but he is still too proud to take any action to help them. So maybe he just watched them to fight, okay? So he creates a plan in which his friend Patroclus will take his place in battle using his armor. So Patroclus' presence actually does help the Achaean army somewhat, but it can only last for so long before the Trojans regroup. So Hector kills Patroclus in battle and steals Achilles' armor. So Achilles is filled with grief and rage after learning of his dear friend Patroclus' death. So he agrees at this point to mend the rift between himself and Agamemnon and rejoins the battle. So he asks his mother Thetis, the goddess of the sea, travels to Mount Olympus to plead with the gods for help in battle. So the god Hephaestus, the god of fire and blacksmith, forged Achilles a new set of armor, and Achilles leads the Achaeans into battle the following day. For the turning point or the climax, Hector and his men are camping outside the walls of Troy. But the Trojan army flees in terror when they see Achilles, because Achilles is emboldened by his rage and kills many Trojan warriors. He even fights the river god Xanthus, who is angered by how many bodies Achilles has caused to fall into his river. At last, Achilles reaches Hector and the two battle. The goddess Athena intervenes and tricks Hector into turning around mid-chase. So it is at this point that Achilles can kill Hector. So he drags Hector's body behind his chariot across the battlefield back to the Achaean camp after their battle. So the triumph Achaeans have a celebration and funeral for his friend Patroclus. For 9 days, Achilles continues to drag Hector's dead body behind his chariot in circles around Patroclus' funeral bier. Following action, Priam, Hector's father, begs Achilles for Hector's body. Achilles returns Hector's body to Priam. So the god Hermes escorts Father Priam to the Achaean camp. So Achilles is moved by Hector's father plea to have his son's body and relinquishes it to the Trojans. As Achilles gave Hector's dead body back to the Trojan, Hector is buried in Troy, and the war ends with the fall of Troy. The story of the Iliad tells the story or the tale of war. Here, the Odyssey tells the story of a journey, the long journey home made by the Greek hero Odysseus after the end of the Trojan War. So along the way, Odysseus has many adventures and suffered dearly before reaching his native land. The poem opens with Odysseus stranded on the island of Ogygia, where he has been detained by the nymph Calypso. So the majority of the story unfolds as Odysseus faces numerous challenges, encounters mythical creatures, and battles the both of forces of nature and divine intervention on his way back to Ithaca, his beloved homeland.
Let's go over a plot summary for the Odyssey. It begins with the introduction. The stage is set, we meet the key characters of the book. We learn who they are, and it ends with Telemachus leaving Ithaca to learn of his father's fate. The rising action of the book is made up of those key moments where the momentum of the plot is driven forward. Telemachus is told by Menelaus that his father is still alive. Odysseus is allowed to escape from Calypso's island. Odysseus ends up shipwrecked and is found by Nausicaa. And Odysseus tells Alcinous all of his stories and is promised aid. Next, Odysseus and Telemachus meet in Ithaca to talk revenge. And then, Odysseus returns home disguised as a beggar and is taunted by the suitors. Finally, Penelope sets up the bow and arrow axe challenge, which Odysseus participates in. Next comes the climax, that moment where all that action that's built up comes to a head. Odysseus and Telemachus, with a little help, fight and slaughter all the suitors right there in their home. Then comes the falling action. Odysseus is able to pass the final test and confirm his identity to his family. Then he makes a sacrifice to appease Poseidon. And finally, the resolution, where all the loose ends are tied up. Odysseus reconciles with his father, Laertes.
For the introduction, the story opens with Odysseus being held captive by the goddess Calypso on a remote island. So back in his home city, Ithaca, his wife Penelope is being surrounded and harassed by her suitors, who have moved into her home, taking advantage of the ancient Greek custom of hospitality. So, Telemachus, son of Odysseus and Penelope, must watch the suitors take over their house, waiting for Penelope to choose a new husband. So all except Penelope assume Odysseus is dead after his 20-year absence. So Athena, the goddess of war, has been watching over Odysseus since the Trojan War. She feels protective toward him and asks Zeus to help her free Odysseus from Calypso's island. So Zeus sends his son Hermes to help Odysseus in his escape. So at the same time, Athena, disguised as a sailor, goes to Ithaca to offer help to Penelope and Telemachus. So she advises the son to leave Ithaca to find information on the whereabouts of his father. So the suitors take note of the newfound courage and authority that Telemachus displays. So they conspire to murder him when he returns to Ithaca. Action. Telemachus' visit to King Menelaus on the island of Sparta. Telemachus learns that Odysseus is alive. His father is alive. So Hermes helps free Odysseus, who sails to the land of the Thessalians. Exhausted, he collapses on the shore, where the princess Nausicaa discovers him. She leads him to the king Alcinous and his queen Arete. There Odysseus tells them the story of his travel thus far. So here's the story. Odysseus relates how, following the Trojan War, his men suffered more losses at the hands of Caecus, then were nearly tempted to stay on the island of the drug-addled Lotus Eaters. Next, the Cyclops Polyphemus devoured many of Odysseus' men before an indigenous plan of Odysseus allowed the rest to escape. So, but not before Odysseus revealed his name to Polyphemus and thus started his personal war with Poseidon. Poseidon is the god of the sea. So, the wind god Aelus then provided Odysseus with a bag of winds to help his return home. But the crew greedily opened the bag and sent the ship to the land of the giant, man-eating giant cannibals, Laestrogonians. So where they again barely escaped. So on their next stop, the goddess Circe tricked Odysseus' men and turned them into pigs. With the help of god Hermes, Odysseus defied her spell and metamorphosed the pigs back into men. So they stayed on her island for a year in the lap of luxury. So with Odysseus as her lover, before moving on and resisting the temptation of the seductive and dangerous sirens. So these sirens are the creatures disguised as beautiful women whose beautiful singing to capture sailors to jump into the sea and drown them. So navigating between the sea monster Scylla, a man-eating monster with 6 heads, and the whirlpools of Charybdis, a monster that creates a whirlpool 3 times a day. So, in plumbing the depths of Hades to receive a prophecy from the blind prophet Tiresias, resting on the island of Helios, Odysseus' men disobeyed his order not to touch the oxen. So, when they touched the oxen, Zeus punished them and all. So, but Odysseus died in a storm. It was then that Odysseus reached the Calypso's island. So that's the story um of Odysseus and his men for going back to his native land. So, hearing the stories of Odysseus' journey, King Alcinous comes to help by providing him with a ship. So, Athena also helped Odysseus once again for warning him of the chaos at home in Ithaca and informing him that the worst is yet to come. So, she told Odysseus to disguise as a beggar and tells him to stop in the farm of his old friend, the swineherd Eumenus. So before he goes to his house, she also orchestrates the reunion between Odysseus and his son Telemachus, whom she has advised to come home. So Telemachus relates to Odysseus the behavior of the suitors, that they plot the mass murder of the suitors to restore honor of their home. So a few characters begin to recognize Odysseus through his disguise. Among them, his childhood dog Argos and his childhood nurse Eurycilla. However, his wife Penelope does not recognize him. So when the suitors encounter Odysseus, disguised as a beggar, they are cruel to him, taunting him and making him fight another beggar. But Odysseus uh, did practice and restrain and bide his time until his plan can be enacted. So, last is Penelope declares that she will hold a contest to choose her new husband or her next husband. So, whoever can master Odysseus' bow to shoot down a row of axes will win. So when the contest begins, none of the suitors can do or can so much as string the bow.
The still disguised Odysseus volunteers to undertake the challenge to the charging of the suitors, but Penelope allows him to try. He strings the bow and shoots through the axes easily. The suitors are shocked and Odysseus, taking advantage of their confusion, begins to kill them and the serving woman who helped them. Athena once again offers aid, and Telemachus and loyal servants join in as well. Finally, Odysseus and Penelope are reunited, but not without a final test on the part of Penelope to ensure Odysseus' identity. However, they cannot live happily ever after just yet. The families of the slain suitors want revenge. The gods finally intervene with Athena and Zeus commanding peace. Odysseus' final journey is to see his father and then to offer a sacrifice to Poseidon so that the god will leave him and his family in peace.
So after talking about the Iliad and the Odyssey, let's now move on to the Greek tragedy Clytemnestra. Before we dive down to the main story of Clytemnestra or Agamemnon, let's now first know its historical context. So, Agamemnon or Clytemnestra is the first play in a trilogy by Aeschylus, the Oresteia. So, Aeschylus was the first or the earliest of the three great tragic poets of Greece. So, who are they? So, it is Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. So Aeschylus was the earliest. So he was born at Ulysses in 525 BCE, and he composed his trilogy, Oresteia, in 458 BCE. Now, let's move on to the key characters of Clytemnestra. Okay, here are the key characters of our story. So they are Clytemnestra, Agamemnon, Cassandra, the chorus, and Augustus. So as you can see in the slide, they have characterizations. But we will discuss about it at the end of our discussion about the play or the story for you to be able to understand why they are described or characterized like that. So, what are we waiting for? Let's now go on to the story of Clytemnestra, the Greek tragedy. So the introduction of our story started like this. There was a watchman in the roof of the royal palace of the Greek city of Argos, standing and impatiently waiting for the outcome of the Trojan War. So this is during or almost at the end of the Trojan War. So moments later, the watchman sees the signifier indicating that they have won the Trojan War, and he rejoices. So the watchman saw a signifier signifying that they have won the war, and he was so happy. So the news about them winning the war escalated and was spread quickly in their city. So following their victory in the war, the chorus recalls how a prophet predicted their victory, and how Artemis forced Agamemnon to sacrifice his own daughter for them to set sail. So Agamemnon killed and sacrificed his own daughter for them to be able to set sail. Okay, let's now move on to the rising action. Let's now move on to our rising action, which took place after the Trojan War. So Agamemnon returns to Argos with Cassandra, a prophet from Troy and a member of the royal family. So Cassandra was forced to enter the palace as a slave. However, she refused to because she had a vision that a woman, Clytemnestra, will kill her and Agamemnon. So Cassandra, being a prophet herself, had a vision that a woman, Clytemnestra, will kill her and Agamemnon inside the palace. She told this prophecy to the chorus. However, the chorus was hesitant and did not believe her. So they still forced Cassandra to enter the palace. So she still entered the palace. So here comes our climax. Okay, so while the chorus was still talking about if they were gonna believe Cassandra's prophecy, they heard a horrifying scream from the palace. So while they were running to the palace, they were already like rattled with the thought that maybe Clytemnestra killed Agamemnon, which is actually what she did. So when they opened the palace door, Agamemnon and Cassandra was already killed by Clytemnestra. They found Clytemnestra to have killed Agamemnon and Cassandra. So the moment they opened the door, Cassandra and Agamemnon is already dead. They died in our climax. So what do you think will be our falling action after this? Why do you think Clytemnestra killed Agamemnon? Let's get to know that in our falling action. In our falling action, Clytemnestra justified her action. So Clytemnestra claimed that what she did was revenge for their daughter. Do you guys remember that part in our exposition where it was mentioned that Agamemnon sacrificed his own daughter to set sail? Okay, that is the daughter that Clytemnestra is actually revenging for. So, Clytemnestra was devastated and angry about her daughter dying, her daughter being a sacrificial lamb for Agamemnon to set sail. Okay, so, Clytemnestra wanted revenge to avenge the death of her daughter. So, what she did was she killed Agamemnon. So, then suddenly, her lover, Augustus, which assisted in her plot, entered the scene. So in our following action, Clytemnestra's love affair, Augustus, which is actually Agamemnon's cousin, entered the scene and claimed that he helped Clytemnestra in her plan of killing Agamemnon. So in our following action, Clytemnestra justified her actions. Then her love affair, entered the scene. Okay. What do you think will be our resolution after this? In your opinion, guys, what do you think will be our resolution after this falling action? With everything that had happened in the story, what do you think will be our resolution? Sit tight and let's now go to our resolution. In our resolution, Augustus and Clytemnestra returned to the palace and ruled the city of Argos, while the chorus separated. So why do you think the chorus separated from Augustus and Clytemnestra? It is because they are loyal to Agamemnon. Okay, they are loyal to Agamemnon. That's why they cannot they just cannot return to a palace where his killer, Clytemnestra, was the ruler. Okay, so they separated from Clytemnestra and Augustus. And that concludes our story. So, guys, in your opinion, what is the moral of the story? What did you learn from the story? Okay, think about it. Think about it. What do you think is the moral of the story? What do you think it is? Okay, if you have gathered any moral from the story, that's nice. And if there's nothing you get from the story, watch again and you'll some and I wish you get some. So as we finish the discussion about the story of the Greek tragedy Clytemnestra, let's now dive down to why their key characters are characterized this way. So, Clytemnestra was characterized as someone who is revengeful and as an intelligent woman. Why is that so? So, revengeful because she revenged for the death of her daughter. And an intelligent woman because she gained Agamemnon's trust before killing him. Because before she actually killed Agamemnon, she showered him with praise, with care, and with love, making her gain his trust. Okay, so Agamemnon is Clytemnestra's husband and is a tragic hero because of his tragic death in the hands of his own wife, and is characterized as less intelligent compared to his wife. Why is that so? Because for Agamemnon, prosperity is everything. Okay? Victory is everything for him. That's why he is considered as less intelligent compared to his wife. Okay? Next is Cassandra. So Cassandra is a prophet and Agamemnon's captive from the Trojan War, from Troy. And she was distraught by the destruction of her homeland, Troy. And she is a prophet that can see accurately the past, present, and future, but was cursed by Apollo. So, in our rising action, based on our rising action, what do you think is Cassandra's curse? So, Cassandra was cursed that no one would believe her prophecy. So, Apollo cursed her that no matter what she do, no matter what she say, no one would believe her prophecy. And why do you think that Apollo gave her that curse? It is because Cassandra refused to sleep with him. Yes. Apollo refused to have sex with Cassandra. That's why he cursed her, which is actually very sad. Okay, so let's now move on to the chorus. So the chorus is actually a group of elderly people that represents the citizens of Argos and is loyal to Agamemnon. So as mentioned earlier in our resolution, the chorus actually separated from Clytemnestra and Augustus when they were set to rule Argos because they were loyal to Agamemnon. Okay? The chorus cannot um just stay there, sit there, praising and serving Clytemnestra, the person who killed Agamemnon, who is someone they're loyal to. So that's why they separate. Okay, so Augustus is described as someone who wants power and revenge and is very authoritative. So Augustus is actually Agamemnon's cousin. Okay, so Augustus is someone who wants revenge and power. So power to rule and revenge because his family was actually cursed and set to die. So his family was dead, and he wants revenge for that. And he's also described as someone who's very authoritative because when he rules, he wants to be the person that the his citizens follow. In other terms, he wants to be a dictator, kind of like that, as you can say. So let's now move on to the discussion about the settings, the themes, and the conflict of our story. So in our last part, let's discuss the setting, the themes, and the conflict of our story. So the setting of our story took place at Greek city of Argos, and it was during the time after the Trojan War. So the themes goes around fate, revenge, and justice. In your opinion, guys, why do you think so? Why are the themes these? Why are these the themes? So it is connected to fate because, as mentioned in the story, in the exposition, it was mentioned that the prophecy was mentioned to Agamemnon that he will win the war. And during our rising action, it was also mentioned that Cassandra told the chorus a prophecy about her and Agamemnon getting killed by Clytemnestra, which actually both happened. So those two prophecies are destined to happen. They are fate to happen. So, let's now move on to revenge and justice. Why is revenge and justice part of the themes? It is because the Greek tragedy itself wouldn't be it if it wasn't for revenge and justice. Because the main motive of Clytemnestra in committing her crime is revenge and justice. She wants to avenge the death of her daughter. She wants to she wants justice for the death of her daughter. That's why she killed Agamemnon. Okay? Let's now move on to the conflict of our story. So in our conflict, it is stated here that it is man versus fate and man versus self. So the man versus fate is applicable to Agamemnon's fate. Agamemnon's fate and Cassandra's fate of dying in the hands of Clytemnestra. Okay, which actually is part of our climax. So, what about the man versus self? So, man versus self is actually applicable to Clytemnestra herself because the anger, the grief she felt from the death of her daughter halted her to creating a crime, creating a revenge plan, a perfect execution of revenge by killing her own husband, which is man versus self. Are we clear? Are we clear? Five claps if we're clear. Yarn. Perfect! Let's now move on to the discussion of um Aristotle.
Hi everyone, I am Charlene Almojuela, and the assigned topic to me is Greek philosophy student selected book from Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Who is Aristotle? Aristotle is an ancient Greek philosopher and polymath. He was born in 384 BCE or before Christ's era in Stagira, Greece. He was a student of Plato, the founder of Academy in Athens, and later he became the tutor of Alexander the Great. At the age of 13, Alexander received an education from Aristotle that consists of philosophy, science, and art, which influenced his thinking and leadership styles. Aristotle contributed to many fields, including logic, metaphysics, ethics, and biology. He wrote works such as the Nicomachean Ethics, which is our topic for today, and politics. Now we know that Aristotle was known since high school because his famous works and theories were taught in school, such as his uh, model of communication, if you know that. Nicomachean Ethics is a philosophical text by Aristotle that explores the nature of ethics and that consists of 10 books. Its main idea is eudaimonia, to which refer or translated as happiness or flourishing. Nicomachean Ethics is also represent the highest good that humans seek for its own sake. There are theories that says that the title was named after his son Nicomachus or his father who's also named Nicomachus. In Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle differentiates voluntary and involuntary actions to define moral responsibility. Voluntary action is done with full awareness and intention, and it reflects someone's or a person's character and will. For example, someone donated to charity intentionally is commendable or admirable. Another example is us choosing teaching as our career. It involves self reflection and conscious choice based on our personal interests and values. In contrast, involuntary actions occur due to compulsion or ignorance. So if someone is forced to harm another or unknowingly gives food to someone with an allergy, these actions are not subject to moral praise or blame. Aristotle emphasizes that moral responsibility comes from conscious choices, meaning people are only accountable for the actions that genuinely reflect their characters. In Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle emphasizes that Ethical actions comes from rational thinking rather than just desires. He defines choice as a deliberate act where a person considers options and select actions based on their values. For example, if someone thinks on how to be healthy, then chooses a balanced diet, that's a rational choice, not an impulsive behavior. Deliberation is finding practical ways to achieve goals, focusing on actionable steps instead of just ideas. Aristotle argues that a good deliberation is essential for making informed choices, which shapes a person's character and moral responsibility. By connecting choice to rational thinking, he shows that virtue is developed through intentional actions based on reflections, establishing a foundation for moral responsibility and ethical living. Aristotle defines moral responsibility as accountability for actions that are voluntary and based on rational choice. He argues that individuals are only morally praiseworthy or blameworthy when their action reflects their true intentions and character. For example, imagine someone who repeatedly lie for their own gain. So Aristotle would argue they are responsible for developing a dishonest character because their choice reinforced their behavior. Another example would be someone who consistently chooses to help others, demonstrate virtue, and deserve recognition. In contrast, actions taken under force or ignorance, such as accidentally harming someone, do not reflect one's true character and fall under or outside the moral responsibility. Aristotle defines courage as the virtue that balances fear and confidence, especially in facing danger. He explains that courage is not about being fearless or reckless, but it involves recognizing fear and still choosing to act rightly. For example, a soldier who charges recklessly into the battle without regard for safety is not courageous but reckless. On the other hand, a soldier who deserts due to fear is cowardly. So, the truly courageous soldier assesses the risk, feels the fear, but still stands firm, knowing it's the right thing to do. Aristotle defines temperance as the virtue of self control, particularly regarding physical pleasures like food, drink, and sex. It involves finding a balance between overindulgence and complete denial. A temperate person enjoys pleasure in moderation but not being controlled by them. For example, take someone who refuses any form of pleasure, such as good food, simply out of rigid self denial, that extreme. On the other hand, a person who constantly overeats or indulges without restraints lack of temperance. A temperate person enjoys good food in moderation, appreciating it but not letting it control them.